Cranberry Thanksgiving by Wendy and Harry Devlin. Maggie darted about like a black-stockinged bird in search of wood for the fireplace. She and her grandmother lived at the edge of a lonely cranberry bog in New England, and the winds were cold at the edge of the sea. Today, Mr. Whiskers was helping Maggie with her chores, and they soon had armfuls of firewood. "Happy Thanksgiving Day, Mr. Whiskers," Maggie smiled at her friend. That wasn't his real name, of course. It was Uriah Peabody, but Maggie had called him Mr. Whiskers ever since she could remember. Maggie was very fond of Mr. Whiskers. Her grandmother was not. "Too many whiskers and not enough soap," she often said to Maggie. "Mr. Whiskers indeed," sniffed Grandmother. Peeking from her kitchen window, she pulled the curtains tight again. Whenever Grandmother baked her cranberry bread, she pulled her curtains tight. The reason for this was that her cranberry bread was the most famous for miles around. It was so famous that bakers all over the countryside had offered great sums of money for the recipe. Although Grandmother scoffed at the whole idea, still she felt it was something wonderful to leave to Maggie. She carefully hid the recipe behind a brick in the fireplace. "Oh, a lot of people would like to get that recipe," she fumed to herself, "especially Maggie's clam-digging friend, Mr. Whiskers. Strange how he always showed up when she took down the great yellow bowl and all the good things that went into it." "Scat! Shoo!" she would call out the window every time he came too close to the house. But forget all that today. It was Thanksgiving, her favorite day of the year. The cranberries had been picked, boxed, and sent to the market. The dried corn had been soaked and the corn pudding made. The turkey was roasting in the old iron oven. Turnips, tiny green peas, and a pumpkin pie were ready. The cranberry bread was cooling on the wooden board. The real work was done, and the feast was almost ready. Every year, Grandmother invited a guest for dinner and allowed Maggie to do the same. "Ask someone poor or lonely," she always said. It never mattered to Maggie or her grandmother that the red carpet was worn and mended, or that the silver spoons didn't match. Friendship and sharing were important, but everyone knew that. Red-cheeked, Maggie raced into the house. While she changed, Grandmother excitedly told her whom she had invited. Mr. Horace was his name, and he was staying at the town hotel. "He actually bows, and he has a gold cane and smells of lavender," said Grandmother happily, "and he's all alone." Maggie looked a little uncertain. "My guest doesn't smell of lavender," she began, "and he hasn't had a Thanksgiving dinner in 20 years. I invited Mr. Whiskers." "Mr. Whiskers!" Grandmother didn't appear to believe she had heard right. "You mean here? In the house?" But now there was a sound at the door and a loud clanging of the knocker. "Quick, Grandmother, take off your apron." Grandmother opened the door, and there they were, both guests, Mr. Horace, pink-cheeked and starched, and Mr. Whiskers in his old captain's hat. As they came in,